Hello and welcome to Good Nightmare, a podcast where we talk about the creepier side of life and all the fun things that come with that. Today's episode is a little bit of a bonus for my listeners, just to say thank you for sticking with me on this incredibly fun journey of podcasting, making new friends, and shitposting on my Twitter. Today's story was recommended by a listener who shared this equally beautiful and sad hometown story with me. Beautiful if you believe in the innocence of this particular person. That listener who sent in the story is Sin Climate, a very kind and lovely person who you can find on Twitter at CYNCLEMENT. Thank you so much for sending this in. This is one of very few recommended episodes, and I was excited to explore it, and I'm now looking forward to sharing it with the rest of my listeners. Spirits can become attached to places, objects, or people. The entities that attach themselves are said to be mostly intelligent, with a strong emotional connection to the object, place, or person, though of course, with attachment to people, this can be endlessly more complicated. Today's episode will look at a case of attachment to an object or a landmark. A landmark which some of you may be familiar with, especially as the majority of my listeners are based in the USA. A spirit attachment doesn't necessarily mean that a particular ghost is trapped within an object. Rather, it may mean that the residual energy of a spirit has imprinted itself upon the object. This usually occurs in situations that involve volatile or highly emotional experiences or deaths, as will be seen in this case. Otherwise, the object may act as a conductor for the spirit. The spirit may visit the object in a sense, or interact through it. The most common spirit attachments we tend to hear about are where intelligent beings attach themselves to or use dolls as conductors, such as Annabelle or Robert the Doll, two infamous objects said to have malevolent spirits or entities attached to them. In this case, however, we're looking into a tree. The Boyington Oak is located in Mobile, Alabama, and is said to be haunted by the spirit of Charles R. S. Boyington. Mobile was experiencing rapid economic growth in the 1830s when Charles arrived from Connecticut. He was a printer, operating printing presses and providing printing services to others. He was also a gambler. As we saw in the episode featuring Edgar Allan Poe, gambling rarely ends well in this time period. Boyington took up residence in a boarding house in the city. It was here in Mobile that he met Nathaniel Frost. There was some alleged tension between the two, as Frost was said to owe Boyington money, though there have been other reports that the tension was caused by the fact that Boyington could not afford his housing, and Frost had offered to help him. This was an insult to his ego. The two were said to have gone for frequent walks together, and on this particular night, they were seen walking together to the Church Street graveyard. This is where Frost's body would later be found near the cemetery. He had been stabbed to death and robbed. Boyington found himself in a very compromising position. He was with Frost the night of his death, alone. There were money troubles, which would explain the robbery, and there was rumours of tension between the two. He was a prime suspect for the murder. Boyington was subsequently convicted of the crime and sentenced to death by hanging to be carried out on February 20, 1935. Up until the very moment of his death, Boyington protested his innocence. In fact, moments before his hanging, he proclaimed that an oak would grow from his heart in proof of his innocence when his body was buried. And Boyington was right. An oak tree did grow from his grave and still stands. The tree is located just outside the cemetery, since the brick wall surrounding it was moved further inwards, and it can be found on Bayou Street. Visitors to the site claim to have heard voices and sounds of crying around the tree. It's also said that when the wind blows through the branches, you can hear Boyington proclaiming his innocence, even in death. Whether the growth of the tree from Boyington's grave is a true sign of his innocence or just an incredible coincidence, it's impossible to tell. I guess it depends on what you want to or what you do believe. Personally, I hover between the two ideas. It being a coincidence is intriguing enough in itself, and if it is a proclamation of his innocence from beyond the grave, well, that's just incredible. Either way, ultimately, 2 men died in this place, and their spirits are now at rest there, or in Boyington's case, trying to rest. If you have a hometown story that you would like to share with me, whether it's a ghost story or a crime that happened somewhere way back in the history of your town, I try not to cover anything too recent as it can be quite painful to hear about and difficult to research, mostly in terms of emotional stress. And I want this podcast to be, while dark, as safe a place as possible to hear creepy stories without feeling too overwhelmed. So if you do want to submit a story, whether it's in your own words or it's a suggestion for something for me to put together, I'm happy for you to email me at goodnightmare_s@outlook.com, or you can send me a message on Twitter or Instagram at goodnightmare_s, or join the Facebook group and have a discussion about your favourite stories. You can find that one on Facebook at Good Nightmare Pod. As always, thank you so much for listening. You guys have no idea how much I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you guys on social media. Sweet dreams.
What's up, UFOnauts? It's your UFO guy, Rob Christofferson. Have you ever been curious about the UFO phenomenon, but unsure of where to start? Have you ever wondered about just what crashed at Roswell? Have you ever wanted common sense advice about licking UFOs? The answer's don't. Then check out the Our Strange Skies podcast, where we dive into America's rich UFO history and uncover what these sightings say about ourselves. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and most podcast apps, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget to look up, because you never know what you'll find in Our Strange Skies. In Gray we trust.